Alonso's Formula One career has been characterised by disappointing moves between teams. He's consistently made poor decisions, and it's led to a significant amount of visible frustration, particularly as he's got older in his F1 career. But in 2023, this has all changed. Alonso is the most positive driver on the grid so far this season, with 2 podiums already, so it seems Fernando Alonso has finally made a good career move. Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. A career of turmoil. Fernando Alonso is commonly regarded as one of the greatest drivers to have competed in the sport. His 2 world championships came very early on in his career in 2005 and 2006, but it's been almost 20 years since that time. In the intervening period between those 2 championships with Renault and today, he's had 6 stints at 4 different teams ranging from McLaren to Ferrari and now to Aston Martin. What's been characteristic of these moves, though, is the disappointing performance and turbulent relationships between Alonso and the team management. Alonso's best team since his World Championships was the 2007 McLaren, a car that was capable of winning the championship but was also at the centre of the Spygate scandal, a situation which left the relationship between Alonso and the team principal, Ron Dennis, in tatters. That short stint at McLaren was followed by a difficult midfield performance with Renault once again, a move that was driven by necessity after he was left without a drive at McLaren. Once again, his return included one of the most controversial cover-ups in F1 history. Alonso won the race in Singapore as a result of his teammate crashing on purpose, and that win was critical to ensure he was contractually obliged to continue with the team for 2009. But it was another instance of controversy that seemed to be following Alonso through the middle stage of his F1 career. Following a mediocre 2009, Alonso got another move to a top team for 2010 as he moved to Ferrari. But despite the Ferrari team winning the Constructors' Championship just 2 years before, Alonso's move to the team coincided with the beginning of the fall from the top for the Italian team. The Spanish champion's performances at Ferrari were nothing short of remarkable. He managed to come second in the championship on 3 occasions during his 5-year stint, with the most successful team on the grid. The highlight year was perhaps his best in the sport, which came in 2012, where he took the 3rd or maybe even 4th fastest car to within touching distance of the World Championship. Alonso rolled the dice on his career once again in a surprising return to McLaren, the team that were rekindling their partnership with Honda that had seen so much success in the 20th century. But this, once again, turned out to be the wrong time to rejoin that team. The partnership was a complete failure, and Alonso's frustrations became more and more apparent as the seasons went on. There were all sorts of comments regarding the slow nature of the engine and the fact that their promises to get back to the front of the order failed to materialise. Despite these comments, Alonso never really had a better option. He stuck with McLaren until they continued to fail with the Renault power units in 2018. This final disappointing season resulted in Alonso opting to leave Formula One altogether, as the driver didn't have any better options and couldn't continue with McLaren while they failed to compete. The next career move Alonso would make was a return to the sport after 2 seasons out, as he went back to Alpine. This move became his 3rd stint and 2nd return to the team where he found the most success in his career. His move to Alpine saw his return to the midfield pack with little momentum to take him back to the front. He did manage his first podium since leaving Ferrari in 2021 at the race in Qatar, but it was still ultimately a return to the midfield and not the success that he'd longed for. And by this point in time, in mid-2022, Alonso was turning 41 years old, an age where most drivers would have retired or at least thinking about retirement. But the Spaniard has unfinished business in Formula One, and he was seeking a multi-year deal to commit his future to an F1 team for 2023 and beyond. He settled on an Aston Martin team that was showing some momentum in the new regulations and had huge growth plans after recent investment. And this is where Alonso has finally rolled the dice and got lucky. And if you want to hear more about Alonso's performances throughout this season, be sure to subscribe to Behind the Drive. The new top team in F1. Aston Martin's entry into Formula One in 2021 started with a fairly disappointing season. The Racing Point team that had done well to copy the best design in the sport in 2020 found that their inability to continue the development of that design through the 2021 season meant they'd fallen back. This was a bit of a disappointing beginning for the team, but in hindsight it was easy to see that an organisation going through that level of investment and growth in such a short period of time was always going to face some difficulties in the initial stages. Since the investment, the team have grown to around 700 employees. which represents a huge change for the team, and given they're still operating in a factory that was produced for Jordan in 1991, they're presumably struggling to find space for all these new people joining the setup. This year will see the first stage of the infrastructure investment, as the first stage of the team's new factory will open, and I think this will be another opportunity for the team to benefit further from the new investment. The 2022 season saw Aston Martin's first new car that was built from the ground up, and to be honest, it was again a bit disappointing. The team were right down at the back of the order and fighting with the teams that didn't have the large budget that Aston Martin now has. However, despite the rather disappointing start, the team had anticipated that this would be the case. In advance of the 2022 season, the team identified that the development direction that they'd taken was not their best option. As such, they'd already developed a second concept, and those upgrades arrived for the team at the Spanish Grand Prix. These upgrades were initially seen as a bit suspicious. The team had followed a similar direction to Red Bull, and given the Aston Martin team's recent recruitment efforts, there was an investigation regarding the possibility of concepts being taken. This was quickly determined not to be the case, and once again, the Aston Martin team remained in the midfield pack. But these upgrades did come good. As the 2022 season went on, Aston Martin were improving, and by the end of the year, the team got one of their drivers into the points more often than not. This improvement was only enough to get Aston Martin to 7th in the Constructors' Championship, but the team had the momentum to potentially be able to compete with the best of the rest teams in Alpine and McLaren towards the end of the season. By this point though, the team had failed to convince Sebastian Vettel that they would be able to compete in the coming years, which opened up the opportunity for Alonso to move to the team for this season. And this move was initially seen as questionable. The Spanish driver was seeking a multi-year deal which he couldn't get from Alpine, and as a result, he made the move. But with the momentum behind the team, Aston Martin have been flying so far in 2023, and Alonso has been their star driver. A complete change in attitude. Alonso's move to Aston Martin has been one that's also seen a change in attitude for the driver, and this was evident even before it became clear that their 2023 car was so competitive. At the team's launch, Alonso was optimistic about the team's chances, as he claimed that the feeling at Aston Martin was special and different compared to some of the other teams that he'd recently raced with those being McLaren and Alpine. He also made this claim about the team's chances for 2023 and then on to 2024.
Definitely we need to get closer to the top teams, so like this we close that gap. So we want to lead that midfield, we want to get closer to these top three, and then in 2024 make another step into that direction.
What this shows is that Alonso had the confidence before the season that Aston Martin would make a step forward, and the fact that the Silverstone-based team has never been a championship contender in the past actually means that they're more hungry for success in the sport. This has been evident in the first few races of the year as well. Alonso is clearly far more motivated than he's been for the last few years, and on the radio he's being so supportive of the team and his teammate. His performances have also been excellent. He's taken 2 podium finishes so far this season and is in a clear 3rd position in this championship. This attitude shift is of course motivated by the fact that Alonso knows he can prove his talent at the front of the order once again. He's been overtaking drivers in other top teams, including Lewis Hamilton, and he's proving many people wrong, including me. His age is clearly not a factor in his ability at this point in time, and he's been able to show his talent even at the age of 41. This attitude is then feeding through into the team. They're clearly highly motivated at the moment, and the whole team is supporting the drivers to get the maximum from the car at this point in time. But it isn't just the attitude that's supporting the team. Aston Martin also has an inherent advantage when it comes to wind tunnel and CFD testing time. Given they finished 7th in the Constructors' Championship last year, they have 58% more wind tunnel runs available to them than Red Bull between the 1st of January and the 25th of June. This is a huge difference, and an advantage that Aston Martin have the resources to take advantage of before the tests get reset midway through this season. This advantage is not just over Red Bull though. Aston Martin can, in theory, develop faster than Ferrari and Mercedes as well, which could potentially put them in a position where they can build a gap on those rivals and bring developments to start to bridge the gap to the top team in the sport. For me, I think that for the team to be in this position compared to last year, and the attitude of the team at the launch to be a focus on 2024, there's a real possibility that the team and Fernando Alonso could well be the first to mount a real challenge to Red Bull in this aerodynamic era of Formula 1. The momentum is with this Aston Martin team, and they have a driver in Alonso who's more than capable of leading a team to a world championship and extracting the maximum from his car when he has the opportunity. This season is going to be fascinating to watch from a development perspective, and I think Aston Martin are probably in the best position of all the teams in the sport.